Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to another beautiful episode of True Connection, where I help you get closer to having authentic connections with other people, probably girls you like. I don't know what else you like to connect with. Wink, wink. So I want to talk about something which I think is very important, and it's kind of like breaking this myth that introversion is unattractive. Okay, because I think culturally everyone who does badly or they seem to make a fool out of themselves or they just can't get a word out is introverted, right? And you have to break that spell. Introversion itself is not unattractive, but it's not attractive, it's neutral. But I think it's not necessarily being born introverted that makes you unattractive. It's just kind of taking this passive role when it comes to your personality and the way you approach like the whole interacting thing, right? I think I don't want to offend you, but I think a lot of you introverts, including me, one thing which can be seen as good or bad depending on how you view it is we are a little bit lazy, right? And I think sometimes we like to say, I don't like to spend time with people because of whatever reason, because I drain energy, etc. But there is an element of laziness when it comes to it, right? And you could argue a bit of selfishness, and in terms of like we don't want to open up, we don't want to share things, we don't want to have to be able to take the first step because that would require a whole different apparatus in terms of how we take action. I think just a lot of people in general, like a lot of guys, even extroverted, they don't want to take the first step. But especially introverts, it's like particularly hard for you to do that. And taking the first step or not, that has nothing to do with introversion or extroversion. I think if anything, it's just like a certain attitude that we've lost access to when it comes to like doing things like we want to do and like being the first mover. Okay. But I do think that doesn't necessarily come down to personality. So what else is there? Okay, this is just a small introduction. I do think you can't just categorize every introvert into the same category, okay? Some of us are more than others, right? Some of us can be introverted in one culture, for example, or in another culture, they're just like completely opposite, completely loud, expressive, etc. But I think you can't really, we are social beings. At the end of the day, we are social beings. You have to understand. And if you keep telling yourself you're not a social being, that doesn't really work in your favor. You have to be able to look at yourself and think, do you enjoy? You have to really say to yourself, do you enjoy being in the presence of other people, right? Because really, like an attractive girl, she doesn't necessarily need you to be the biggest social butterfly, right? But there's a few things you have to be able to do. One of them is you have to be able to be like comfortable, right, in the environment you're in. You don't want to have any kind of social phobia or sense of like not fitting in or sense of unease or tension, right? Because that communicates the wrong things. But you're not expected to necessarily know everyone or be friends with everyone or be the biggest clown or the biggest joke teller or the biggest storyteller, right? It just happens that these things can be pretty beneficial, right? It's like it just happens to be that if you are a good storyteller, then people will pay attention to you, and the more people pay attention, the more people listen, the more it is likely that that person can introduce themselves, right? But yeah, I don't think introverts just dislike people altogether, dislike being social. So you have to make sure that's the case. And second thing is kind of like, I think if you kind of verbalize everything that's in your head, so if you sit down, you are communicating, you are talking, you are expressing things in your own head, and it's just that obviously not all of those thoughts they get translated into a real life interaction, and I wouldn't say everything's going to be good enough to be communicated in an attractive way, but to say like, oh well, I have less things to talk about, or I you might say I have less things to talk about. Okay, so you might be the inferior kind, or you might say, oh, I don't want to talk about stupid stuff, and you might take the other egoic route. But all these things are they're just kind of ego construct that you make from this concept introvert. And like the thing is I've never heard anyone say, oh, um, I'm doing well because I'm an introvert, right? I've never heard anyone say that. And so you're always using negative definitions. But if you go back to what we are saying, so yeah, they want you to see, you have a general sense of relaxation, but also like, yeah, a girl wants you to see like if you talk to whoever, like maybe you talk to people, like you have an interest, you take an interest in people, right? To a degree, okay? And taking interest doesn't necessarily have to be like you are kissing their ass, you like overly complimenting them, but like taking an interest is like, you're able to form bridges with other people, right? Maybe it's like co-workers, okay? Maybe that's a bit cheesy, co-workers or whatever, flatmates, those are the easy ones, or maybe people just around you, like people just around you when you're waiting in the queue, for example. Like that's all attractive, and if you do that or not, um, you're just gonna be sub communicating a certain message, and you want that to be positive, okay? But these things are not limited to like what kind of man you are. I mean, psychologically, they're limited to what kind of man you are, but what kind of man you are isn't about your what you did on the questionnaire, on the psychological questionnaire. Okay, so we've got them things established. So really anyone can do that, and I think it's fine as an introvert that you might be interested in say things that are a bit more boring or a bit more antisocial, let's just say, or a little bit more isolating in terms of like solo activities. But I think being interested in people has nothing to do with if you're an extrovert or not. And you can actually, when you are genuinely interested in people, you can have better conversations. You can have more captivating conversations because it's coming from the right place. And there's no kind of magic cure that you can give to a guy to make him more interested in other people, unless you just want to go down the kind of objectification route and be like, oh, that person's really hot, that's why you should talk to them more. That guy's really cool, that's why you should talk to him, and giving like an objective reason. You need to have a subjective reason why you should talk to people. And so one of the ways that you can make it easier to convey your best qualities is to just focus on being able to take interest in the girl in front of you, finding little things or finding little commonalities or whatever, like really kind of going into that properly, versus like having any kind of scripts or any kind of methods, techniques, strategies, whatever. It all has to come from the right place. But the message I'm trying to give to you really in the video is it's just like a lot of your actions are determined. You can do them right now. Like your actions are your actions. Okay, you are your own person, and so what one introvert does or what one extrovert does, these are not like constraining you. You have freedom. Like you have freedom to chat or not to chat or whatever. It's not like because of some underlying identity underneath you that's doing all of the excuse making or whatever, right? It's just so yeah. Introversion isn't the cause of your like lack of social connection or whatever. It's more like your attitude and your motivations, and you have to kind of work on your motivations, attitude, and approach, in order to just have like healthy interactions. Okay, before you make them flirty, before you make them whatever, they just have to be healthy. Okay, and that's really not everyone can do that, but pop true connection, that's where you want to get to. You want to get to something healthy, right? And then it can be fun, and it can be entertaining, or it can be philosophical, or whatever, right? But have a think about that, and stay on this channel for more discussion and more tips, more insights, and yeah, have a think about that.